Hello and welcome. So glad you're here with us. This is one of the final weeks of the Get Unstuck program. I am Jess. I'm here with Dr. Randy Berlin. Hi, Randy.
Hi, Jess. How are you today?
So good.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
So we're nearing the end of this program, but we're also tapping into some of the most important tools that you'll need to learn. In today's class, we are going to discuss breathwork and we're going to practice breathwork. So Randy is really good at providing sort of background information on why these things are so important and how to conceptualize, how to think about it so that when you're doing it, you get this full impact. And then we're going to discuss the rebirthing process. So this is a guided visual meditation that Randy is going to bring us through, in which we are going to go through the birthing process. So I want to give a warning here that this is a visual meditation. It does require us to think about things that some people might find unsettling. If that is the case for you, we talk about sexual interaction, we talk about sexual organs, and we do talk about your mother, your father, and your involvement being birthed. And so if you need to use that pause button, please, by all means, feel free. The work that we're doing here is really powerful, but you do not have to force your way through it. What I would suggest is that we do the breath work practice first and then maybe take a break. It's the beauty of these online courses is that you are able to hit that pause button and just go and come back. And after we do the rebirthing process, we're going to integrate straight into an inner child meditation. So we'll go through this rebirthing and then we'll walk through the different stages of our life. And Randy's going to guide us through all this so that we understand the importance of it and what we're getting out of it. So that's that. That's what we're doing today. Let's dive right in. Randy, can you tell us a little bit about what this breathwork is for or what it's like and how do we apply it?
To me, we're in the fun parts and the exciting parts of this process. We've done, some heavy stuff from the beginning around intention and dealing with cross addictions, and then looking at, what we've done that we feel guilt about or shame about that we need to make amends about, and then we're taking that action. And then, moving into the areas where we were focusing on what was done to us. And some of that challenge to be able to let go of resentments or let go of hanging on to the trauma that happened to us. And then moving into, as we did with the competent adult, and finding that sense of being the person you always needed in your life. And also that sense of our inherent value. And we're going to kind of underline that again today. So with the breath work, what I want to underline this idea that the breath, since it's the first thing that we do when we leave our mothers, if we don't take those breaths from the beginning, right after we come out and we're cut loose from our mothers, then we won't survive. So the breath is the most fundamental thing that we have to do on the planet as human beings to survive. And so, because it's so natural and so woven into the fabric, most of us never learned or ever thought about, what the power of this breath is or how it can be used to enhance our lives. We just kind of did our breathing and did whatever we did, and however we breathe, we breathe. So recognizing the fact that unconsciously, dramatically, when we have different emotional states, we go through different emotional experiences, then our breathing changes with those experiences. And so when we're in a frightening situation or a scary situation or maybe a traumatizing experience, we may find that we've stopped breathing for a while. Or maybe we went into more of a hyper breath, more like a hyperventilation. And that those two breaths, the short breath or holding your breath, seem to go with fear. And then there's a breathing, if you notice when you're angry, that there's a different kind of breathing pattern. Maybe it's longer, maybe more intense. When you're sad, maybe there's kind of a heaviness that comes with the breath, a slow heaviness. And then when you're ashamed, maybe heart races. Maybe it does a lot of different things when you feel ashamed. But all of these emotional states are normal for us, natural for us, and we breathe with those. And every pattern has, every emotional has a breath pattern. And so the reverse is also true. If I change my breathing pattern, I change that a particular emotional state. And so, not to make them go away necessarily, but just to breathe into these emotional states allows us to kind of be with that experience rather than resisting it or avoiding it or numbing it or some other things, which many of us have done. But to be able to breathe into it and just let it be part of life. So if I'm feeling sad, feel the sadness and cry. If I'm feeling angry, feel the anger. Doesn't mean I have to act on it. It just means I have to let it be. Feel it, notice it, be with it, breathe into it, and then notice what happens next. Most of the time, these patterns that come as part of life will move through us if we allow them to do so. They don't necessarily want to hang out. They just want to get our attention or remind us of something, bring some flavor and color and richness to life. And but they're not necessarily something you have to hold on to and grab them or fight them or avoid them. And if you do, then they will stick around. And usually the ones we avoid are the ones we don't want to have. So the ones we don't want to have hang around and stay around because we are resisting them. So one of the premises here is that, what you resist in life will persist. The Buddha talked about, acceptance is the most important thing about accepting what is. Not that we like it, not that we want it to be that way. It's just accepting that it is that way. So it's one of the aspects of the mind. And as we're doing the breath, we're going to be talking about the mind a little as well, because they are so integrated. And because the mind is so busy for most of us and really active, and we don't get a lot of chances to take breaks necessarily. We may be projecting into the future and making up scary stories or exciting stories or fantasizing stories that sound wonderful, or we may be in the past and having euphoric recall about good times in the past, or we may be focused on the horrible things in the past and depressing things from the past. The idea with the mind, though, is that it wants to move around. It seems to go backwards and forwards, moves into the future, because the mind doesn't really have much to do if I'm just focused in the moment. If in the moment, the mind doesn't know what to do with itself because it just needed to be expanded to be bigger than your body and to be around you, maybe even outside that boundary system we created, and to make it so that the mind isn't in charge. Consciousness or that awareness or that ability to be present is in charge. And then we forget, and then we remember, and then we forget, and we remember, and we forget, remember. Seems to be the way it works. And the more, though, that I found that staying in the present allows me to be able to have an ability or an easier ability to respond rather than just react. If I'm just letting my unconscious mind run the show, then I will react to all the things that I have feelings about or resistance to. And the things that I like or that I find value or find pleasure in, I will tend to want more of. And so wanting more of something else throws this out of balance. And this is a thing in nature that is woven into the fabric of that. Things flow and they ebb and they get larger and they get smaller and they get sad and they get real. And if we can allow that to be, like, remind ourselves that we are part of nature. We are part of this natural process rather than separate from. And I remember in graduate school, we would be doing these arguments about nature and nurture. So is it really our nature for this to be going on? Or is it something related to how we were nurtured and cared for and so on and so forth would be more relevant to what's happening in our lives. And the truth is they're both important. Our genetics and what's naturally part of our makeup is definitely an influence, and the way we're treated and how we're given and nurtured in life also has extreme importance. So let's do a little breathing. And the one I'm going to offer you is the main one I'm going to offer you is one that has to do with more relaxation and rejuvenation. So this breath will be done through the nostrils. The breath will come in. You'll notice it going into the throat, upper parts of the chest cavity, expanding the rib cage, and then going into the abdominal region. And this breath is a breath that is going to be done slowly. So when you're breathing into the nose and you're filling the lungs and the chest cavity up in the abdominal region, you breathe into the count of 6. And as you're exhaling, you will breathe to the count of 8. So the breath goes 6 in, 8 out, 6 in, 8 out. So you're noticing that the exhale is longer than the inhale. And that has a couple of reasons for it, but one of them is that relaxation comes with the exhale. So if I want more relaxation, I want more letting go of stress or issues, then I enhance the exhale. When we talk about taking a deep breath in, when you want to do something or take a pause before you respond or react to something, the comment is always take a deep breath in and let go before you do anything else. And so we're going to be doing that, only we're consciously doing it in a way that says, let me get in the habit of this. Let me practice this one so that it starts to become more second nature. So if I'm starting to feel anxious and starting to feel overwhelmed by that anxiety, I can just move into the breath and go, oh, wait a minute. I remember that if I change my breathing, that will affect my anxiety or my fear. Let's take something right now that maybe in your mind is, if you thought about it, it would be a little scary for you. Maybe something that causes you a little anxiety. If it was on a scale of 0 to 10, maybe it caused you 4 or 5 level of anxiety, not overwhelming, but just some, just thinking about it. Maybe it's giving a talk in front of people. Maybe it's doing a particular activity that you're going to be evaluated on and you're anxious about doing it well. Or maybe it's just saying hi to somebody and talking to somebody that you don't know. All those things can be anxiety producing for people, usually because of the ego's a fear of rejection. And but in this case, we're going to just center ourselves with the breath. So I want you to imagine your event situation. And then it's probably easier to close your eyes just to be able to get more clear and focused on the body. But if you don't, that's okay. Some people don't like to close their eyes because they're afraid of something happening, and they want to know what's going on at all times. So if that's the case, okay. If you can kind of just shade those slightly, maybe drop them down to a 50% or 30%, something like that. Maybe something where you're focusing about 10 feet in front of you, letting the eyelids drop a little bit. So breathing in, I'd like you to breathe into the count of 6. So you breathe in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold. And then let go. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then just do this a couple of times on your own. Thinking of something that would be scary to you generally creates some anxiety for you. And just doing this breathing exercise as you're thinking about whatever that event is. And just notice that impact of that breathing. If you notice anything at all, I would generally recommend to people to do it 5 to 10 minutes twice a day, in the morning and in the evening, just to get in the habit of doing it, being conscious of your body, being conscious of the breath, being conscious of breathing and counting so that you're consciously filling up and letting go fully. And the other one I want to give you today is when it's a little more rapid breathing, but it's still a full breath. So you're going to go to the abdominal breath. You go into this abdominal region, so you're making sure you're getting plenty of oxygen. So you don't start to feel like you're going to, feel you're going to pass out or whatever. And this one is more for just kind of clarity and alertness. So it goes something like this. We're going to count into 3 and exhale to 3. 3, 3, 3, 3. So take a transition breath in through the nose and out. We're going to breathe in. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. 2, 3. Inhale. 2, 3. Exhale. 2, 3. So it sounds kind of like this. And then put your hand on your abdominal region so that you notice and you're clear that you are actually breathing in deeply, even though it's a short breath. So if you do that breath for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you'll have more alertness. And one of the things I remembered early on when I was having children and I was learning to do breathing exercises with my wife, when the medical staff was wanting my wife to slow down and move it too fast, not let go of the child too quickly. They were just trying to slow things down for various reasons. And then if they wanted to speed it up a little bit, it was kind of stuck and the pain was going up, they'd have you do this shorter, little quicker breath. More than 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. So that we have the faster breath. So if you want things to move a little faster, do a little quicker breathing. If you want things to slow down a little more, to relax a little more, go with the longer, slow breaths. And the longer slow is 6 in, 8 out. Jot that down. And then the faster breath is 3 in, 3 out. So we got those 2 breaths. So let's do the slower one and then move into the quicker one and just do that for a few moments. So let's take a transition breath in and out. And breathe in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And another one on your own. This is chest cavity and abdominal region. And out. So now let's go back to the shorter breaths. It's a little more alertness and moving things on a little faster. So we do the 3 in, 3 out. So breathe in 2, 3. Breathe out 2, 3. Breathe in 2, 3. Out 2, 3. In 2, 3. Out 2, In, 2, 3, out, 2, 3. And just keep your eyes closed if you can, and just notice what you're aware of. When you do this on your own, and we'll go over this again when we get together, going over the homework, but just to practice this so that you have this chance to be able to get a sense of it. And you'll find, I think, you find that you're more relaxed after the longer breaths, maybe a little more alert after the shorter breaths. And again, 5 to 10 minutes at the max. So if you wanted to do it the quickest, do the longer breaths for 5 minutes and do the shorter breaths for 5 minutes. If you want to get a little more benefit, a little more practice in, go for 10 minutes in, 10 minutes out. Both things will take you 20 minutes. And at the end of that, just to notice, just going to take a little bit of time for you, jump right into activity and just notice how you're feeling, what you're aware of in your body, sensations in your body, anything at all, whether your mind's any quieter or if it's noisier. Just notice that. Make sure you do the abdominal breath so that you're maximizing enough oxygen.
Thank you, Randy, for putting that to words. I love how you explain breath work. You were the first person to teach me anything about breath work. And when I got started, I was convinced, 100% convinced, that I was just the type of person who would never be able to meditate. I know I've heard people say that now, and I think, no, that can't be. Everyone can meditate. But I actually do remember what it was like to feel that way. So if you are somebody who thinks that, I totally get it. I was a monkey mind person whose mind was running 24/7. I just very much in my head. And I was convinced that what I had been through in my life, whether it be trauma or just the way that I grew up in my head, I was convinced that that had caused me to be a certain way and that I was going to have that monkey mind forever. It's just who I am. It's just how I'm wired. That's just who I am. And so when I started meditating, I was incapable of sitting still for more than a minute, literally a minute less. And then I started doing Sudarshan Kriya. And this was all through Randy that he got me started doing this type of breath work. And I started doing that series of breathing exercises every day. And I did a challenge that asked me to do 40 days, a 40-day streak of Kriya, they call it, this breath work every single day for 40 days. Huge challenge. But let me tell you, I ended up doing the 40 days and feeling so good, just energized and proud of my progress and able to step into this place that we've been talking about, this expansion, this consciousness. At that 40-day, around those 40 days, I was able to experience breath work in a completely different way than I ever thought possible. It ended up giving me the ability to just have patience and to feel calm and centered, which is not something I ever really felt. And I didn't know that because I only knew what I knew. And then when I started slowing down and breathing and being in my body and feeling that sort of sense of calm and grounding, then I was able to compare the two. And it just became so clear to me that that breath work was really valuable and it was doing something really good in my life. So it's over a year and a half later now. And I do that series of breath work every single day. If I miss it, I never miss more than a day. It's just so powerful. And I share this with you only because I know so many people think I can't meditate, and I am with you. I was there. I know what that feels like. But now that I've done this practice, I can tell you that it's a really powerful thing. It's a great tool that you can bring into your life.
Now we're going to move into this idea of rebirthing. Since we talked about the breath and the birthing of children. So this is a rebirthing that goes into looking at the issue of inherent value. So I'd like you to go ahead and this time, if you can, if you will, please, to close your eyes. And begin by the nice longer breaths. So the 6 in and 8 out. So as you're breathing nice and fully and completely, allowing yourself just to be a little more relaxed. I want you to go ahead and see if you can imagine the moment that you were conceived. And to do that, I'm going to take you through a little guided meditation, a little visualization. And when I make these suggestions to you, and you think, gosh, I don't see anything. I hear your words, but I don't, in my imagination, my internal imagery system, this really doesn't display anything. That's okay. I just want you to have an impression, if you can, just have a sense. So when I say apple, maybe some people see a bright red apple, some people see a green apple, some people see no apple at all, except there's an impression, there's an awareness, there's a knowing of what an apple is, or a banana. So that all we want is the kind of light impression. Oh, yes, that's a banana. Oh, yes, that's an apple. Oh, yes, there's a difference. Oh, that's an orange. And just have that lightness. Don't worry about visualizations. This is not the purpose of this. It is to practice visualizations, but it may come that way. So if it does, that's fine. So when I suggest some of these the physiological components, just to know that this is just a way to help you get to a place of understanding that you have inherent value. So, just we ready for this? Ready to go? Okay. So if you would, I'd like you to close your eyes. And the first thought I'd like you to come up with is that you become an egg in your mother's body. You are the egg that will come together with the sperm. You are the egg that will embrace and pick the sperm that comes to you at the end of the long challenge for the sperms. And that at that point, you will help allow the sperm to enter. Seems that there's little filaments on around the egg that help and take in and gather and pull in the sperm. Not some kind of drilling process like I was taught, but just this idea that there is kind of being emerging that's happening. And it's a choice emerging. So you're this egg inside your mother, and you are in a place now to be able to be receptive to the sperm. And then I'd like you to go into your father's body. And if some of this distresses you or disturbs you, just the thought of this, you can just let it kind of do the long, slow breaths until we get past it. See if that works for you. If not, just open your eyes and think of something that's a pleasant place for you. So you're in your father's body and you become this one of the billions of sperms that are going to travel out of their father's body into your mother's body. And these sperms are in a competition to get to the goal, which is the egg, in which the sperm then gives its life. It explodes when it gets inside the egg and creates this DNA that is the beginning of creation of the first cell of your life this time. So I'd like you to go ahead and be the sperm. Imagine that you're part of this billions of sperms that are traveling up into this vagina, into your mother's body, traveling, watching the sperms around you just kind of die out, fall apart, exhaust themselves, and you continue. And you continue to the first race that you're ever in as a human cell or human membrane. Sperm. And you're going to win the first race you're ever in. So from the point of view of being a winner, we're going to talk about that in the physical form of activities or achievements or whatever. The first achievement you have is that you completed the task that you were designed for, which is to internate and give your life. And when you do that, you have that sense of the egg embracing the sperm, bringing it in, sperm giving its life for your life. Just notice how that imagining works for you. What happens, if anything at all? It may be just a matter-of-fact statement, or maybe something will happen when you were conceived and that very first cell was created. It has all of the DNA, everything that's needed for your nose and ears and all the body parts and arms and legs and your heart, your intestines, your liver, everything that's needed in your body is already in that first cell, in the DNA that's been left behind from the sperm. And if you would, I'd like you just to see if there's an experience there that you could either describe in writing or maybe draw a picture. But for right now, I just want you to go ahead and just easily and effortlessly let yourself imagine that this is the beginning of your life and that this first cell starts to divide, and then the next cell divides, the next cells divide, and this evolution, this unfolding, just like a maple tree coming out of a seed or maple seed or coconut or a walnut or whatever. The seed that is you is your first experience, and the life force comes in at that point. If the life force does not come into that first cell, then life ends. And at any point along the way in this process inside your mother's body, for any reason, if it doesn't continue to have life support, like the life source, we call it prana, as we talked about earlier. If this prana is not, this life force is not in that continuation of this human body that's developing, it will die. So now you've been in here for a week, starting to continue to grow. You're going in for a month. Now you've been in for 2 months, now 3 months. Eyes, different body parts are starting to develop and grow. You become like a 6-month-old fetus. And then you come right up to the very end of the time inside your mother's body, where you're going to know that it's time to move out into the world. Now, you may be reluctant. Sometimes, we don't want to leave. We like it in here. It's nice and warm and tight and everything's taken care of, and you don't have to do anything. Just be. However, there's this natural push or this natural pressure to leave your mother's body and go out into the world. And what I'd like you to do before that, I'd like you to imagine who are the people or who would you like to have at your birthing experience, at this celebration of your life? Who would you like to have there? Are there particular people that you could think of? And I want you to imagine what would be the ideal environment for you if you could have imagined your birth and created it for yourself. What do you imagine that might look like? We're not talking about what happened. We're talking about what you could imagine could happen. And so maybe everybody there is anticipating and so excited that you're coming. They can hardly wait to get to see you. And they just are just so pleased that you have chosen to come in and be a part of this group of people in your life and join them in your life. So we've got that created, got environment, got warm, whatever it is you'd like to have in your environment, and the people involved, and the attitude, and the joy and the anticipatory aspects of having you come into the world. So on this occasion, what I'm going to have you do is just to start to notice you're going to come out of your mother's body, and it's really tight, really difficult. And you start to notice maybe your own awareness of pain, if you have it, or maybe you're aware of the pain in the host, because you are your mother. I mean, you and your mother are clearly still one organism that's bonded and connected to the umbilical cord. So as you're going out, you're starting to move out. Sometimes, little beings are ready to go and mother's body is able to relax somewhat enough so that it isn't horribly painful. Usually the first time is more so than others because your anticipation and the fear and the resistance to the pain is all happening. But as you slowly come, to that place where you're crowning outside your mother and they can see your head, and so you're starting to come through and you finally start to come out. It looks like this amazing experience when this little body comes out of its mother. And it's almost like this little child just kind of blossoms all of a sudden. It's just like, oh, it's like a miracle. And everybody around that space is just so high, getting to be able to share this experience with each other and with you. So happy. So you come out of your mother and you cry and you get held and you put up against your mother's body, and then somebody is able to cut the cord and wrap you and clean you up and put you in a nice little blanket. It's nice and tight. You get to be held by your mother and laying on her chest and hearing her heartbeat. This heartbeat that you've been listening to for however many months you've been inside your mother's body. So familiar. Just so soothing. Ah, the bump. And then you notice the tightness of the blanket or the wrap. So it feels similar to what it was like when you were inside your mother. It's tight and it's warm. It's not wet, but it's warm. And the heartbeat is so familiar, so comforting. So I want you to think about this if you can and imagine that you have this infant part of you is one state of consciousness that exists within you. Everything that ever happens to a lifetime gets registered in some form or another at the cellular level or at other levels. We don't understand it completely, but it seems to happen. So at the cellular level, you're celebrated, you're wanted, you're loved, you're blessed, and you only are feeling the energy that wants to encourage you to be yourself. Let yourself just be natural and comfortable. Let the unfolding take place effortlessly. Not trying to make yourself be somebody, not trying to do something you think everybody else wants you to do. Just that you're supported and encouraged to be yourself. And just notice what that's like. And if you imagine that infant being you on your chest, notice how that feels to you. Just notice. And now we're going to go ahead and just kind of move into the life you have experienced. So you go from being an infant and you become an infant that's blossoming and growing and 1 month old and 3 months old, 6, you're a year old. You don't have any memory of any of these things. That doesn't matter. You're just unconscious is hearing my words. And your conscious will respond. in some way, maybe not something that comes into your conscious mind, but in some ways it's being activated to tap into these earlier experiences that you did have. We had the imagined experience, now we're having the experience that actually happened for you. So now you move into that stage of development when you are a 1-year-old. And gradually you're 18 months. Maybe you started talking early, maybe you didn't. Maybe you've been moving around, maybe you started, besides crawling, maybe you're doing some walking. Just get a feel for what it was like at that stage in your life, 1 to 2 years old. And it takes you up to 4 and 5, and then somewhere in there you start the early educational process, whether it's in the States, it's the preschool maybe, and then kindergarten, and moving into the different grades. And every time along this way, there'll be different experiences you'll have, but different impressions you'll have of what you think are real, what you think are important, what you think are true, whether they come from your parents or teachers or authority figures in other ways, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whatever it is, you're internalizing all of this. Kids are supposed to be totally self-centered, supposed to just be taking in what's going on around them, the food, the nourishment, the love, support. Or if it's a lot of hostility and anger and nastiness and other things happening, or neglect and avoidance, just know that all these things are making impressions about who you think you are. So we're going to, tie this back to that inherent value to remember when you first were conceived, you had inherent value because you existed. The fact is that that life force came into that cell and created a life for you that allowed you to have it unfold with the help of this life force that's in everything that's alive on the planet Earth. Without it, everything that's alive will die. So now we're in school and we're starting to move into these areas of self-consciousness around education, and other kids in classes are being compared, and people are giving grades, and we'll be hearing stories about, whether you're doing well at school, or if you're smart, or if you're stupid, lazy, hard worker, all these variations of different kinds of interpretations and labels that get put on us. So you'll be getting yours. And as you move into school, and if you happen to be a person who's quiet and listens and follows instructions and is reasonably good at memorizing words, or maybe they have a visual memory so it's easier for you to remember things, all these things will have an experiential interpretation of who you are at that stage in your life, at least in the academic setting. So if you're good at these things, then you'll be a good person. If you can't sit still, you're bored, you're causing trouble, you're unhappy, maybe you picked up a bunch of toxic waste from your family, those carried feelings we talked about, and maybe they're affecting you. You're having a hard time with them. You're trying to deal with them, but you don't know what to do. So the way you do it ends up getting you in trouble, and now you're in trouble for having carried a bunch of toxic waste from your family of origin. Anyway, that school experience moves up into when your body starts to change into a physical being that can move into being able to create babies and create more life. So you hit adolescence, which is confusing and disorienting because everything's changing within your body, hormones, and socially. Guys get more interested. Women get more interested. Sexuality becomes part of the routine, no matter who you're with or what's going on, or it becomes denied. And as you get into other levels of school, if you've had good academic background, you'll probably continue. If you have some significant trauma have going on, then you may regress or go another direction and rebel and be angry and resentful. And all those things could be happening, or you could be continuing to do well with this occupation that you have of sitting in a classroom and given information and you regurgitating it back or reinterpreting it, giving it back. This goes on, could go on from throughout high school to go into college. Now, maybe drugs and alcohol, other things got introduced here, maybe not. Maybe sexual abuse or sexual activities that were wanted or unwanted got activated. Lots of things that influence here. And so just know that as you're moving into young adulthood, these influences are still blossoming and unfolding and being reinterpreted by you, and then also from the world around you will be doing an interpretation of who they think you are, who they say you are or you should be, and that'll be influencing then, your experience. And as you move into young adulthood, moving into whatever you may or may not want to do as a way to make a living, career, profession, or nothing at all. Maybe you're dealing drugs, maybe you're selling all kinds of things that are stolen. Who knows what you're going to do to start to make a living or start to provide for yourself? Point is that some of these have labels that say, oh, that's horrible, or oh, that's really good. And then it must mean you're really good if you do the really good thing. And all these things are all these conditional impressions about who we think we are that are just covering up our inherent value. It just is. So we identify with these things that we're being told or that we've interpreted. It starts to such degrees of getting in the way of us tapping into our true nature. So part of what we're doing with this program is getting a lot of the false impressions, false ideas, false beliefs out of the way so that something new can come in its place. A new way to think, wait a minute, maybe I am lovable, maybe I'm worthwhile, maybe I'm valuable, maybe I matter. Maybe I never got the impression that those were true. I'm starting to see that maybe they were true anyway, whether I got that impression or not, or whether that was my interpretation of my experience, or that's not what I was told or taught, either through being neglected or being abused and attacked in some kind of way that caused a lot of problems for me. So moving into adulthood, and no matter what your age is today, just know that this evolution will continue through adulthood, into later stages of life. If you happen to have children, you may become a grandparent, you'll be watching this next generation come. If you don't have children and you just continue on with your life, just know that the unfolding takes place if we allow it to happen. Part of why we get stuck is we take on ideas, beliefs, and impressions we think are true and act as if they're true, and they keep us stuck. Either through behaviors or just mental attitudes or emotional states, influences, shame can hold us back, keep us from continuing just to live life and continue the adventure that's been made available for us. So all that's been offered to you in this program are only what I have determined and have found over my 50 years in this particular career that I find valuable for myself and have found them valuable for other people. So getting unstuck, it isn't that it's necessarily easy because, as we talked about, some of the things we've asked of you to clean up from the past or to be able to integrate and realize that it wasn't about you that these things were happening, that you were traumatized or that you were abused, but that they were just life in its form that you happened to get, and that ultimately today we're all responsible for whether we clean up the mess behind us, whether we acknowledge it for what it is, we let it be, and then we let it go. So that this new possibility, the new richness, the new vitality that's available is waiting for us. It's already there waiting for us. And if we get stuck again, which we're likely to do in one form or another, you will have had the tools. You will have been having that experience over these weeks that we've been offering you this course. You'll have a tremendous amount of new habits and patterns and tools you can use. We emphasize you gathering your toolkit so that you have tools to live life in ways that's constructive and beneficial to you and those around you. Realizing that after you've come unstuck and you've been given new gifts and a new way of life, it's extremely valuable and important to pass it on. If this course was beneficial to you, pass it on. If these ideas, pass them on. These new habits, pass them on. The wonderful thing about this kind of internal work is that what we find, we can either let go of it because we don't want it anymore, or we can say, hey, this is really good, and I don't want to hoard it. I want to give it away. Because I get to enjoy it every time I give it away. If you find a really good book or a movie or a story or something that you found really good, it's nice to be able to pass it on to somebody else because you got so much out of it. And maybe they get a lot out of it, or maybe they don't. But at least you have the joy of giving it away. And then if they do find value and you do connect in that value, it's always a treat. And you get to enjoy it again. Like, oh, wow, yes, that was a good thing, an important thing for me, valuable thing for me. And it was such a treat to be able to give it to you and see you catch the value of it and bring it into your life. So we've moved from the breathing, an integral part of our lives, mandatory. You can only go a few minutes, most of us, or you don't last. And then we take that and take it forward and just know that this is an unfolding. We have to allow it to happen. We can't make it happen. So anyway, I think that just about covers what I wanted to share today, Jess. And so I'll let you take it from there. And thank you so much for listening and being a part of this.
So wonderful, Randy. Wow, I'm in a state that really had an effect on me. Thank you for your efforts, for explaining everything the way that you did. For this week's homework, we're going to do a drawing exercise or a writing exercise. It's up to you. But what we'd like you to do is while you go through this rebirthing process, which we've done together, I want you to visualize what comes up for you. And the homework is to draw that or to write about your impressions of what that is like. What is it like to come to life? What is that life force energy like? What feelings come forward? What thoughts come forward? And be honest. We also suggest maybe using your non-dominant hand. If you're a right-handed drawer, then you could draw with your left hand. And the reason we suggest that is because this isn't about perfection and beauty. It's about expression, expressing what it's like to go through that process of seeing this being, seeing ourselves come to life and noticing that we have this value from the very beginning, and that we are this beautiful, clean slate that is about to take on a world of impressions. And so what comes to mind for you when you go through that process? You can write about it or you can draw. For this week's group call, what you need to do is come prepared with your drawings or with your writing about the rebirthing process. Also, please come prepared with any questions or impressions. This was a lot today. It's a lot to do this type of work, but it is so beneficial to help you move through things. And that's what we want to do as we get unstuck. We're like dislodging all this stuff and like learning how to be present and to let it pass through us. So it's so valuable what we're learning here, but also understandable if it's a lot. If you have questions, if you have any needs, you are always most welcome to contact us. Thank you so much for being here, for showing up. This is huge. You're here, you're doing the work, and you're learning all these beautiful tools that you have for life. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. See you next time.